week. I would like to locate for you some of the hardest to find places. Can anyone honestly raise their hand and say they have at least begun looking at the map quiz a little bit? Then some of you may have some places you wish to ask me that you have not been able to locate, or you are not exactly certain exactly where to place it and things like that. Please ask me some of those questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Yes?
Shiloh?
Yes. Now, first of all, Shiloh is a what?
Battlefield.
That's right, it's a battlefield. I don't want you to write battle of on the map because that's really going to make the map messy, isn't it? So we're saving you. You don't have to write battle of. You're just going to write Shiloh. Now, what are the dots on this map representing? Cities. Are there also marks there for the battle sites? No, there aren't. Okay, so battle sites are never dots. So this is not Shiloh. The Battle of Shiloh was fought for the control of that city. That city is Corinth, Mississippi. Corinth, Mississippi. What state was Shiloh fought in? Tennessee. Here is the clue. No matter how close you are to locating something, if you get it in the wrong state, it is wrong. You have to get these things. You know what I'm trying to say? The one thing you're supposed to know about Shiloh is that it wasn't a battle fought in Virginia like almost all the other battles of the war. It was fought in Tennessee. It was fought in Tennessee, extremely close to Corinth, out to Corinth, Mississippi. It was fought in Tennessee, extremely close to Corinth. So, where do I want you to put it? In Tennessee, extremely close to Corinth. Now, what side of the river you put it on, I guess, as a matter of fact, it was fought exactly here, okay? But anything within 1/8 of an inch or so of that, what are you going to do? Don't mark with an X. What should you write in that portion of Tennessee?
Yes.
The word what? Will that take up more space than that X?
Yes.
If a single letter is in the correct location, is it correct? Of course it is. So if you started with S here and ran all the way across there, would that be okay? How about if I start here and just the H at the end? Why not? Because it's a letter. Any way that I can possibly argue to give you the correct answer, I'll give you the correct answer. Okay? What if you write Shiloh like this? Shiloh. Is that correct? No. It's in northeast Tennessee, where the battle was fought in southwest Tennessee. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And so only use dots and arrows in emergency because you know where you wrote the word. Like if you write Shiloh here in the ocean, what should you do next?
Draw a line to it.
Draw a line to the exact place because now you have to be absolutely precise. If the line stops about here because you're a little lazy and didn't feel like writing that pencil the next 1/8 of an inch, it's wrong. Okay. So it's much better to just write the word, and as long as any letter is in the right place, it'll be okay. And only use arrows up here up in this area where you're going to have to locate a whole bunch of stuff. Right here, there are many places to locate it, not enough room on the piece of paper, and so you'll have to use some arrows. Yes?
The Missouri Compromise line?
Yes. The Missouri Compromise line is the southern border of Missouri, drawn out across. Can you see the southern border of Missouri is also the northern border of Texas? Actually not? Okay. Well, that was a purpose for that because Texas was to be a slave state. And so all of Texas had to be south of the Missouri Compromise line. In fact, when Texas was an independent country, did we own considerable or claim to own considerable territory north of that line? When Texas entered the Union, we owed a great deal of money. We had a great deal of debt from the 10 years that we have been an independent country. And so we cut a deal with the federal government and sold the federal government half of North New Mexico and the Panhandle and all this to the government, and then they covered our debt. Okay. And in addition, they decided to go ahead and obey the Missouri Compromise line, so that all of Texas would be south, the Missouri Compromise line, so Texas could be a slave state. All right. More of these legitimately hard to find places. Now, of course, is the Missouri Compromise line on a map in the textbook? Of course it is. Everything on this list is in the book. It's just that many of you aren't good at reading maps. As a matter of fact, when you see a map, you pretend you are looking at a blank piece of paper. Okay. Can we all agree that many of you don't look at the maps in the book and only read the text because the maps confuse you? Well, hell, I'm going to try to make you not afraid of maps. There's nothing scary about geography. It is the easiest topic, the easiest subject there is geography, because places are just where they are. Yes. Next.
Chickamauga.
Yes. Okay. That's an excellent one. What is this city here?
Chattanooga.
Chickamauga was fought very close to Chattanooga. I'm going to accept anything in this area here. I mean, it was so close to the Georgia border that it's just Chickamauga was fought between Chattanooga and Atlanta. Yeah? Isn't that fair and just? Yeah. Okay. Very good for that one. A big word with lots of letters, how can you possibly write that word there and not get one of the letters in the correct place? You're going to have to, if you write Chickamauga on the map, you may have to start over here and finish over here. Okay, it's a lot of letters. Next, and these are mostly battles and lines, that's what I'm expecting. More? Go ahead, you guys are asking a question among each other, ask the whole class. Please. No, I'm talking to you two. Yeah. You ask me, so the whole class can help. What did you want to know?
No, I just wanted to know.
Yes?
Exactly who did it.
Good, okay, that's fine. I'll show it to you again. I am willing to say things twice. No problem. Matter of fact, can you see that this is the same line all the way across the United States?
Yeah.
Southern Missouri is also the border of Southern Kentucky and Virginia. And that's the Missouri Compromise line that kept the country together until the Compromise of 1850 eliminated it because of the admission of California.
All the way up, yeah.
Just identified as the southern border of Missouri. You don't, you want to draw the line all the way out, that's fine, that's up to you. As long as I know that you put it in the right place. A lot of people even feel like they have to include this little thing here, or it's wrong, or I don't know. So actually, I know the history of this little thing here, and all it has to do with a rich guy, of course, who wanted that land to be in Missouri, because he owned it. And he didn't want it to be in Arkansas because everyone knows that Arkansas is a poor state. Yes?
Where's Chattanooga?
This is Chattanooga. It's hard to tell it's a dot, but that is a dot, as you can see, even though it's next to a river.
So the dot, of course, doesn't actually have to be labeled.
Is this Corinth not on the list? Well, then it's not on the list. That's something up again. One of these days I'm going to remember to add Corinth. There. Oh, and I have to write this as well. There. Hopefully that will allow me to remember to keep that for next year. Every year I forget to add Corinth. Now, let's talk about this again. Let's look at the instructions. 60 of these, how many place names are there for you to study? How many will actually be on the quiz?
60.
Do I want you to put 66 just to show how smart you are? No, I do not. Okay. So do not add additional places. If you find that you have added additional places, what should you do with those additional places before you turn it in? Scratch it out or erase it. Same thing if you have put something, if you have put the same, what should I do if you write Washington, D.C. 3 times because you're not sure which city it is and you've just guessed with 3 cities and one of them happens to be right? What should I do? I think I should count it wrong. I really do. Isn't that cheating? Why don't you just write 100 Washington, D.C.s? You got to be right one time. Put Washington, D.C. where you start. Okay, yes. So don't do that either. Yes.
Where's Shenandoah?
Yeah, there. Ding, 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 ding. You can't find Shenandoah Valley in the book. I've looked. It's not on the map. But as a matter of fact, the Shenandoah Valley is extremely easy to locate on this map because it is what?
Virginia, West Virginia.
It's the border between West Virginia and Virginia. So it couldn't be easier to find. In fact, in real life, it's just slightly to the east. But what the heck? So the Shenandoah Valley is a valley down the center of the Appalachian Mountains. And the Appalachian Mountains are the border between West Virginia and Virginia. So that is the most difficult one to find. But as I said, I just located it for you guys. Everyone is here is not going to get it right. Even many of you who will get an F will know where Shenandoah Valley is. Even if you don't know where Virginia is, and that will be embarrassing. I'll say, look, honey, this student knew where Shenandoah Valley is, but not Virginia. And I know why. Yes? Somebody pronounced it correctly for the gentleman. Appomattox. These are difficult to pronounce words. Okay, often very quirky little southern towns. Appomattox Courthouse, what's the significance?
That's where the war ended.
That's right, the last battle of the war where Lee surrendered. Okay. I'm not sure if it's a battle. Where should we put it? Don't you agree that basically we should let people put it anywhere down here in southwest Virginia? Anywhere there in southwest Virginia. However, if you identify it right here, should I give it correct? No, it's pretty far away. But anywhere in this area of southwest Virginia, just write Appomattox across the bottom of Virginia, and one of those letters is going to be in the right place, isn't it? Yeah, and that's the only thing that's happening in that part of Virginia. As you might expect, many of the very important battles of the war were fought between the southern capital of Richmond and the American capital of Washington, D.C. It's only 100 miles, and there were at least a dozen battles fought between there, of which I'm only asking you to locate a few. Okay, so that's the only place in the map where you have to locate Washington, D.C., the Potomac River, the Battle of Antietam, the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Wilderness, and the Battle of Bull Run. And they're all pretty close to each other. All right? Very good. So I'll just start moving ahead and pretending like you're asking. It's taking too much time. Professor Donia, Antietam, or Ampetitapocapoo, because they never pronounce it right. And then I go Antietam, and then I say, Antietam is in the narrowest part of Maryland. Huh? You guys see that Maryland has a panhandle? Okay, the southern border of Maryland is the Potomac. The northern border of Maryland is Pennsylvania. So there was this area of Maryland. This is all Maryland. Okay, you see that that's all part of Maryland now, called a panhandle. Like this is the panhandle of Oklahoma. This is the panhandle of Florida. We use that term a number of times, don't we, in America, for geographic features. And the Battle of Antietam is where Maryland is the narrowest. Okay? It's good enough for this class. In fact, it's slightly a little bit more to the east than that, but good enough. Or good enough for horseshoes and hand grenades. Okay. And Gettysburg has to be located in Pennsylvania, doesn't it? In the southern half of Pennsylvania. If you locate Gettysburg in the southern half of Pennsylvania, once again, don't put a dot, because if you put a dot, it's not right, I'll count it wrong. If you just write the word Gettysburg along the southern border of Pennsylvania, one of those letters will be in the right places. Okay, so the more specific you get, if you want to show how smart you are by specifically marking these battles, and you get it wrong, I will count it wrong. Although it would have been right if you had just put the word. Okay, I'm trying to be nice to you all that way. Good. Okay, more places? More places? Yes?
What if you write big and you can't really fit it in there?
Yeah, then you're going to have to use the arrows. You write big, you're going to have to use arrows.
Right,
Make sure that the arrows stop at like a dot.
Alright.
Okay, like Washington, D.C. If you're going to write Washington, D.C. here, then your arrow has to go all the way to the dot. If it stops somewhere in the Chesapeake Bay, then I'm going to think you located Washington, D.C. in the Chesapeake Bay. So it's very wet there. All right, so that is a reality. All right, but even then, just try to write as small as you can. Take your time. Okay, it's my best guess, because no matter how sloppy this, I have seen students who have very big handwriting that cover the entire map with letters, daring me to be unable to grade it, and I'm able to grade it 100%. Accurately identifying and getting it back to the student. It doesn't even take me any more time. I've been doing this for 20 years. There's no way you can make this map so sloppy I can't figure out if it's right or wrong. Okay, I can accomplish that, so you don't have to worry. Next question? More places? Yes, go ahead.
Antietam was...
Yeah, that's right. We just said that. The narrowest part of the panhandle of Maryland. I like how every time I locate a place, the first person who raises their hand asks for that same place. Good paying attention. Yes. So go ahead. I suppose somebody wants to know where Antietam is. Where's Antietam? Antietam? Where is it? Okay. Next place. Anyone else?
Or next for a battle, it can be a town or a battle.
Well, none of those dots are actually on the map as battles. I don't have. Those are just towns. There are no town sites, like I don't have on the map to locate Battle of Atlanta. I just have Atlanta. Matter of fact, you don't have to write Battle of to save time. Okay, very good. More places. The Mason-Dixon line is a imaginary line from the southern border of Pennsylvania all the way across to, all the way across the country from the southern border of Pennsylvania. It represents the line where people stop speaking with a northern accent and start speaking with a southern accent. It's a cultural division. But it is famous. I didn't make it up. You've all heard of it before. Okay. Those are difficult to locate. More?
Mason-Dixon, I saw the western half of Delaware, and then it L-shaped.
If you wish.
That's right.
It's too right. Yeah, I mean, that's fine too, and I won't count it wrong if you want to show off how smart you are by making it, I'm just looking for you to know that it's the southern border of Pennsylvania.
It's in Google.
Yeah, Google put it in that way. You know. What are you trying to say now? The Delaware people in Delaware don't speak with a southern accent, do they? They do not, because I can prove it, because Vice President Biden is from Delaware, and he does not speak with a southern accent. So Delaware is not a southern state. Matter of fact, Maryland's not. The Mason-Dixon line isn't accurate anymore. People of Maryland, Baltimore is South Mason-Dixon line. I've been told from people who have lived in Baltimore that nobody speaks with a southern accent in Baltimore anymore. Matter of fact, it's getting hard to find a southern accent in Washington, D.C. anymore. You have to go down to Virginia now. Okay. But that was valid back then. Yes?
Vicksburg.
What? Vicksburg. Okay. Vicksburg. Vicksburg, the fortress on the Mississippi River. A very famous battle. Okay. More. We're one by one going through all the battles. Yes? Bull Run. Bull Run is in Virginia, as close to Washington, D.C. as you can locate it. Got it? You know? The Battle of Bull Run was fought in extreme northern Virginia, as close to Washington, D.C. as you can get it. The first battle of the Civil War. So I got the first battle, I got the last battle, the most important battles. Yes? More? Yes?
What's the Wilderness?
The Battle of Wilderness was fought exactly halfway between Richmond and Washington, D.C. The Battle of Wilderness should be located exactly halfway between Richmond and Washington, D.C. in Virginia. North of Richmond, south of Washington, D.C. in Virginia will be good enough for the scale of this map. You'll have just enough room to write Richmond, and then above it you write Wilderness, and above that you write Bull Run, and just above that you write Washington, D.C. And then you draw an arrow to the Potomac River, because you won't have any room to write Potomac. And then you got to write Antietam, then you got to write Gettysburg. So you got boop, 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 boop. Okay? So you will have to try to write very small, or you're going to have to use arrows.
You can write the ocean and use
Yeah, obviously you can write in the ocean, and then draw arrows, yes. But remember, once you draw the arrows, I'm looking for more specifically correctness. Yes?
What's that little dot on the lower Texas?
This represents Monterey, which is actually just south of this. The first important Mexican city captured during the Mexican War. So this isn't really just Civil War geography, it's Test 4 geography. All this stuff we've covered in Test 4. Monterey is actually really about here, actually, but it's off the map then. So I put it there. Okay. Okay. Good. More questions? And you're also asked to locate that's why this river's here. Is this river really big enough to be on this map? No? And what is this river?
NYC?
Yeah, that's right. Oasis, which has a role to play in the war with Mexico. That's right. I almost said Guadalupe. Okay. I just lost my mind. I don't remember where. But Guadalupe is over. Isn't that over here?
What's the San Antonio, isn't it?
That's actually, Guadalupe is the tributary that flows through San Antonio, but then the Guadalupe National Park. Oh well. I was playing a quiz game with my daughter and I got it wrong. The name, I didn't even think there was a national park in Texas, but according to this quiz game I just played, there is a national park in Texas. It's called the Guadalupe National Park, and I've never heard of it before. I didn't think we had it. I thought we only had state parks.
That must be recent.
Big Ben.
The Big Bend, that's a state park.
Because there was
I would say almost every national park in the U.S.
I think that quiz question is wrong.
There's not one listed for Texas.
There isn't one. I agree with you, the quiz card was wrong.
There's no national park.
Just because a quiz game doesn't have to be right. It could be wrong. I'm agreeing with you. Okay, good. More?
Buffalo?
What?
Buffalo?
Buffalo. And why is Buffalo on there? That's where the Erie Canal goes, and that's the chapter 9 and 12 stuff, okay? And it's on one of your maps in that chapter that's got a map about canals and such. That's Buffalo. So what's this?
Detroit.
Very good. And this?
Chicago.
Very good. How about this then?
That's Pittsburgh.
That's Pittsburgh. Very good. These are the growing industrial centers in the north. New York City's there too, but it's hard to tell because it's the confluence of all these coastlines and rivers, and so the dot kind of disappears, but there it is. There is a map in your book that locates New York City here. Is that map in our book correct?
No.
That is not. Have anyone else been to New York City? Raise your hand. We all agree that that is not where New York City is. Okay. So I don't care. It's still wrong. New York City is where it really is on Earth, not where the book mislabels it. Okay. Somebody made a mistake. You know, historically, the people who write these books don't put those mistakes in. The typesetters and the typecasters and the people working at the publishing company whose only job is to type word for word off of your word into what format they use. That's where the mistakes come in. For people who are just typing out. Okay. If you're wondering. More places, a few more minutes and I gotta stop. We have used up almost 1/3 of today's entire class, so I gotta stop. Any other place? Huh?
Did you say Vicksburg?
I'm not going to show the same places twice. Is there anyone who wants to quickly ask me where 2 or 3 places are that I have not said yet? Because this is the end of the review session. Really important. Many of you are only going to get these places right. As I just told you before, the ones I tell you, because you're not going to study.
Did you show Gettysburg today?
Yes, I did. Oh, crap.
Sorry.
Will anyone mention some place I haven't already said?
Santa Fe.
What?
Santa Fe?
Excellent. Some place I haven't already said. Santa Fe, New Mexico. There it is. Anything else? Anything else? All right. Now, okay, let's get started with the class material then. I've used up a lot of class time. I hope that helped you guys have a little bit more confidence for the math quiz. I want everyone to do well with this class. And so, let's go ahead. Look, we've got these last 3 things here. We were talking about Dred Scott case, the John Brown raid, Democratic Party, and election in 1860. We can cover that as well. So we are now finishing essay question number 3, and we'll do all 4 today as well. I might have to run this class a little bit late today. There's just a few minutes, hopefully. I'm sorry, I always get that wrong. It's only acceptable if it happens accidentally. So if I don't say it and run the class late, I'm okay. But if I say I'm going to, I've broken school rules. So there you go. I should have just pretended like I wasn't going to and then do it. All right. Let's deal with John Brown's raid, which is a study guide term. And let's see, I'll bet some of you know the basic information. Let's just deal with John Brown's raid multiple choice question. My multiple choice questions are not trying to test whether you understand my political ideology. They're mostly based on facts and such. There it is. Now I don't have to ask you what year, because there it is, 1859. Where? Where was John Brown's raid? Harper's Ferry. What state? Virginia. Excellent. For something like that, I would think that a geography answer would be the best multiple choice question. Okay. So, who led the raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia in 1859? John Brown. Who was John Brown? Use one word. A blank. An abolitionist. What was he trying to accomplish with this raid? And if you had asked John Brown what he was doing on the day that he launched the raid on Harper's Ferry, what was he trying to do?
Raiding an arsenal.
Yeah, that's how he's going to accomplish his goal. You mean his entire goal was to grab some weapons? Civil War started because one guy wanted more rifles? Was he going to put those rifles in a hole in the ground? Or sell them on the black market?
He was trying to arm a slave with them.
You're absolutely correct, so say it with confidence. Okay? Yes. Yeah, when you know you're right, don't say it like you don't think you know. I know that's the way the world operates, but there you go, speak it out. He wanted to spark a slave uprising. By this time, John Brown believed that he was on a mission from God. In fact, he said that God was speaking to him directly, that he needed to launch a Spartacus-like slave rebellion. He got together a group of several dozen armed, violent men from the north who rode across Pennsylvania, down through the very narrow part of Maryland, crossed the Potomac River, and attacked a federal arsenal. An arsenal is where our government stores its army's weapons in peacetime. If you haven't noticed, tanks and armored vehicles are not driving up and down Marsh Lane all the time. We keep our weapons here in the United States in arsenals, and so do all other countries. As you might expect, civilians are not allowed to break into arsenals and seize army weapons. And if and when that happens, there's something going on in the country. When your government loses an arsenal, something is going wrong. Okay, very seriously. And his goal was to seize these weapons, pass them out to slaves to the South, and start a slave uprising that might explode. He's trying to spark a civil war. He is willing and might even expect to become a martyr, to die in the process of this. The very idea sounds like it's a suicide mission. He wants to be seen as a freedom fighter, a martyr, and hoping that his death will also spark a war to destroy slavery. Okay. He does seize Harper's Ferry, but there was a regiment of the U.S. Army. A regiment is smaller than a division. A unit of the U.S. Army was very close, stationed very close by to Harper's Ferry. It was under the command of an energetic American military commander named... Who is the name? The name of the very famous commander who was at this time an American general who captured John Brown and executed him on that very same day. Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was the American general who captured John Brown and executed him for an attack on an American facility without trial. It was what you call a, what's that phrase called for military justice? Drum something?
Justice.
Well, no, that's the definition. Where you have a court-martial that lasts 2 hours. You bring them before, you say they're guilty, and you shoot them all that very day. Okay. Yeah, the simplest kind of justice. But I want you to realize the consequence. Now, that's the information that would be on a multiple choice question. Now, here's what you would put in an essay. The consequences. A Yankee has now launched a terrorist attack on the South. From the Southern point of view, how can we stay in the Union if people from our own country are now organizing armed bands and attacking? Okay. From the Northern point of view, John Brown is a hero of the abolitionist movement, a person willing to sacrifice their lives to free the slaves. So one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's all a matter of your perspective. Okay. And of course, obviously, we would all, I don't know, still, how to sympathize with this guy or not. Okay. Is it correct to use violence if you know that you are in the right? No. Yes. Absolutely yes. No. No, it is not. Okay. Good. All right. So that is, would we all agree that John Brown raid is not a match on a very dry mound of straw, but it's a gallon of gasoline. Yeah, it's a massive catalyst. It's not a small catalyst. This is from this point on, Yankees and Southerners, it was no longer safe to be in the North as a Southerner. And lots of Southern sons, plantation owners, where do you think they sent their kids to college?
North.
They went to the north. Well, not anymore. They all leave. It's not safe if you're a southerner in the north or a northerner in the south. You're going to get beat up in the streets. There is now hatred. People have died in many places now over this question of slavery, and it's become it's chronic. We're not going to be able to recover from this. And the very next thing that is going to be ruined by these questions over slavery is a presidential election. The presidential election of 1860 is so important that there are a number of study guide terms involving it. The election of 1860 is, and can you guys see that this is actually one term because the commas are there. This is the name. What were the political parties in the election of 1860? The Republicans, the Constitutional Union Party, the Southern Democratic Party, and the Northern Democratic Party. And how much you want to bet, I want you to know the names of each of those candidates. So here we have an election with 4 different political parties, with 4 different candidates, an election completely and totally dominated by issues concerning slavery, so that no other issues were even in people's minds. And what we're going to see now is these disagreements over slavery destroy the democratic process itself. When this election is over, the South will secede from the Union. Simple as that. What caused the South to secede from the Union? In the most simplest term, that is absolutely correct. The election of Abraham Lincoln was the last straw that caused the South to secede from the Union. We will not stay in this country if that day Abraham Lincoln is president. We will secede even if it means war. Okay. And so obviously this is the last cause, and a cause important enough that it's an essay question. Discuss the candidates, issues, and results. The election of 1860 is only half. That's 1 page, or 1.5 pages. And then which southern states seceded from the Union, so I want a list. That's only going to be a couple sentences even, isn't it? And obviously, do I not want the name of the first state to secede from the Union? And then give them to me more or less in order, and then at the end, the last few states to join. Okay, there were only 11 after all. 7 of them joined right away, and then 4 others joined many months later. And what was the name of the first southern state to secede from the Union? South Carolina. Okay, so I want you to list the names of the 11 southern states that became the Confederacy, fought the Civil War against the United States, fought the Civil War against the United States. Once those 11 southern states secede from the Union, they're not Americans anymore, they are enemies of America, and will be destroyed militarily as a result. Okay. Enemy nation. Okay. And which were the last 4? Okay. Then which did not? Because there were a number of southern states where people spoke with a southern accent and owned slaves that did not secede from the Union and stayed in the United States. What were those states called, by the way? What's the phrase for those states? Border states. Border states. And then we give you a date for what happened with each of those. Okay, very good. All right? And so let's put a map up here of the election of 1860 with the names of the 4 candidates. See, election of 1860. Let's get all of this text out of the way because it's causing a little bit of bleed through. We don't need to know that. There we go. There they are. The Republicans nominated Abraham Lincoln. The Southern Democrats, John Z. Breckinridge. The Constitutional Union, John Bell, and the Northern Democrat, Stephen Douglas. But you know now that I'm not going to stop there. I'm not going to spend 10 or 15 minutes explaining it all. And what is the whole point of it all? Especially, you might begin to wonder what happened to the Democrats. They divorced. Okay? In many ways, we could think of America. Here is the United States of America. And it's made up of the North and the South. There's not much linking these 2 together. Very little. Matter of fact, the only thing that really links Americans together, if you think about it, the only thing that links Americans together is every 4 years we vote for president. That is all we do as a nation. That's it. Oh, and fight wars together. We serve in the military. We all serve as American soldiers. We don't break the American military up into units based on states, do we? Do we? Anyone serve in the military? You're just in the American military. Okay, but other than that, really the only thing linking the country together at this time are the two political parties. The Democrats and the Whig Party were the only thing keeping Northerners and Southerners together. And what had already happened to the Whig Party? It ceased to exist. So there is this huge gap opening up. Now there's only one thing holding the country together. Some people are Democrats. Southerners are Democrats. Northerners are Democrats. And political parties have leadership. And the leaders of the Democratic Party, Southern Democratic leaders and Northern Democratic leaders of the Democratic Party, would get together every 4 years before the election, hold a convention, and nominate one man to run for president for their party. In 1856, they nominated James Buchanan. And in 1852, they nominated Franklin Pierce. Northern Democrats who got elected by promising not to say anything about slavery, pro or con, just to not speak, to be mute on slavery. Okay. In 1860, the Democrats were unable to agree on a single candidate. They held several conventions, desperately trying to mend the rift. But Southerners now were not satisfied with a Yankee nominee who was soft on slavery. They demanded a pro-slavery Southerners. We want a pro-slavery Southerner to be nominated by the Democrats, or else we're out of the party. And the Yankees said, all right then, no. We want things to stay the way they were. We'll nominate a Northerner who's soft on slavery, but we will not nominate a Southerner who is pro-slavery. As a result, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, divorced itself. It broke up into two separate parties, one called the Northern Democrats and one called the Southern Democrats. Now, the whole point of this lecture is to discuss what position each of these four men held concerning slavery. So if you were to create a chart, it would be Republican, name, party name, candidate's name, position on slavery, and then electoral vote. So the only thing missing from this chart, if you want to recreate it, is their position on slavery, which I will give you. Okay. But at the same time, I'm not creating that chart. But once again, as you can notice, even when I don't put charts on the board, I am verbally giving you a chart that I think in charts. Charts and graphs are how I think. To figure things out, to come to understanding of something.
Like PowerPoint.
I make it into a chart. Let's start with the man who got the fewest votes in the Electoral College, because the popular vote, we don't elect presidents by popular vote. You have to win states. You have to get a majority of a vote. You have to receive a majority of the vote in at least one state, or you don't get any electors at all. Some of us, well, me and Charles, once again, when I started this class, taught this class, Ross Perot was running for president at the time. In 1992 and 1996, Ross Perot ran for president as an independent. He got 20% of the vote in 1992. How many electors did he receive in the Electoral College? None, because he didn't win any state. The most he got in any state was Texas, 25%. So he didn't even come close to getting even one electoral vote. And that was the problem of Stephen Douglas. There were still many people up north who were Democrats. They'd been Democrats their whole lives. They're not going to stop being Democrats just because the Democrats have now turned into two parties. These Northern Democrats aren't going to vote for the Southern Democrat. They're going to vote for Stephen Douglas, who was the most famous Democrat. He was the Speaker of the House, the man who had pushed through the Kansas-Nebraska Act, a famous and powerful politician. He got 1.3 million votes, that's 29% of the vote, but the only state he actually wins is Missouri. He only gets 12 electors, that's only 4%. He is not the next president. Matter of fact, many people felt that what was his position on slavery? To continue supporting ideas like popular sovereignty, which had obviously failed. It had failed to keep the country united. It had led to the bleeding of Kansas. It had led to the beating up of Charles Sumner. It had led to the John Brown raid. It was clearly not working. And also, Supreme Court and its Dred Scott ruling, which could be interpreted only almost any way you possibly wanted to interpret it. And one of the ways you could interpret the Dred Scott case is that it was now legal to own slaves anywhere in America, even in states that had banned it. If I was legally able to own a slave, take him to New York, die, and that slave has to go back to slavery, then what does it mean New York is a free state? I don't think it means very much to me at all. That's what Abraham Lincoln would say. Now, once again, I'm warning you, there's a test question on U.S. History 1 on this exit exam, which is a pathetically bad job of dealing with this. And that's because, like I said, it's the exit exam where your professor gets a 23. So if you get a grade higher than a 23, you're not only smart, but you're a good bootlegger. Because if you get a higher than 23, you're really, really smart. You don't only know the subject, but you know what the people who wrote this exam expected you to say. Because I only got a 23. I refuse to accept those two questions that are supposed to be answered. No, I won't accept that. It's wrong. We'll pick another one. But I don't get to decide the right answers on that one. Somebody else gets to decide. All right. So Stephen Douglas's worn-out ideas on slavery and popular sovereignty just weren't going to work. It didn't get many votes. Meanwhile, there's John C. Breckinridge, who was nominated by the Southern Democrats because he was the most pro-slavery candidate to ever run for president. He pushed past the idea of, he publicly discussed slavery as the best thing on earth since white bread. That he not only wanted slavery to be legal everywhere in America, but the American government should then push slavery across the world as well. He saw slavery as an inherently good and morally justifiable thing because black people are racially inferior to white people, he said. So he is an abject, upfront racist and pleased about it, positive about his racism. And hopefully we can understand that not only is he not going to get any votes in the North, he's not even going to get any votes in the border states where Southerners have had some social interaction with Yankees. And if there is going to be a war, I hope you realize that people down here are the first battles of the war going to be fought in New Orleans. Where are the first battles going to be fought? Between the two areas. Live in Virginia, you may not want to secede from the Union because you do not want the Union Army to destroy your state. Or the Southern Army. You don't want your state to be destroyed in a war. People down here, it's just not that serious to them. They're all that North is so far away, it's not a big deal for me. So only those people whose lives were most tied to slavery and were most in favor of it were willing to vote for Breckinridge, and that was only about 850,000 people. But that did give him basically almost all the states that seceded from the Union. There's 9 states voted for Breckinridge. Those 9 states seceded from the Union, so did 2 additional ones. There were only 11 Confederate states. So you basically can see where the Confederacy is right there. And Breckinridge only gets 72 electors because these states have smaller populations, especially with the 3/5 compromise. They can only count black slaves as 60% of a person, quite understandably. You can see that if you win the state of New York, you get 35 electors. You can win 3 southern states and not get that many. You got to win 4 southern states to get 35. Yeah, that's right. And that's because New York has a much larger population. It's completely legitimate. There's nothing artificial about these numbers. They're based on the census of 1860. Okay. All right. There. That leads us to Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans, where I am going to step aside for my discussion on the election of 1860, go back a number of years, and create the Republican Party. We've never even mentioned the Republicans. So I have to leave this lecture for a little while and give some background. Who are these Republicans? Who is this man Abraham Lincoln? And what do they believe in concerning slavery? And that's going to lead me to the study guide term that we have skipped. The Stephen Lincoln-Douglas debates. The origin of the Republican Party, Lincoln-Douglas debates, I'm doing them now. Okay? Okay. Good. And we don't need that map up there anymore. Instead, we want that up there so you guys can know what I'm talking about. The origin of the Republican Party and the Lincoln-Douglas debates for the U.S. Senate seat of 1858 is my background in the Republican Party, which was founded in 1855, the year after the Whigs disintegrated. When the Whigs disintegrated, half the voters in America had no party to vote for anymore. If the Republican Party ceased to exist tomorrow, those voters would not become Democrats. They would have to form into other parties. Okay, and that is what happened in this case. As a matter of fact, the Republicans were a coalition, is the word we use here. So let's define coalition. Reminding you once again, now that we're near the end of the semester, that I'm not teaching history, that I am teaching vocabulary. A coalition is when people are joined together by just a single issue and disagree on almost everything else. You're different in almost every other way except you agree on this one issue, so you're joined together for this one issue. A coalition. Okay. A coalition of abolitionists, Northern Whigs, and the Free Soil Party. Abolitionists are people who oppose slavery on moral, ethical, and religious grounds. The Northern Whigs don't have a party anymore. They need to join something. And Northern Whigs, what separated a Whig from a Democrat? Whigs believed in patriotism, and their loyalty to the United States of America was more important than disagreements over slavery. They wanted to preserve the Union, did the Whigs. They wanted the question of slavery to go away. Did not want to deal with it one way or another. Like many politicians today don't want to deal with questions concerning abortion and would rather not talk about it at all. It's certainly not a vote getter. You start talking about abortion in a campaign, are you winning more votes? You're going to lose votes as soon as you start speaking it. And the more you talk about it, the more votes you're going to lose. You're just going to anger people. So it's best to just ignore issues like that. Now the Free Soil Party. Free soil. Do you think they mean that if you vote for them, they're going to dump a dump load of dirt in your front yard for free? No. What they mean has to do with this question of the extension of slavery out west. The Free Soil Party wanted Western territories to be free, that only free people could settle there, that masters could not bring their slaves and engage in unfair economic competition with people from free states. They wanted Kansas, Nebraska, and the Western territories to be only open for free states and closed off to slave states. Showing you once again that these people all disagree with Democrats and have problems with slavery, but in different ways. Abolitionists oppose slavery for moral reasons. The Free Soil Party disagrees with slavery for economic reasons. And the Northern Whigs oppose want to just ignore it and hold the country together. Okay, those are the three groups that joined together to become Republicans. And remember, they could use the word Republican now because the Democrats had stopped using that name over 20 years in the past. It had been 25 years since Democrats had called themselves Republicans, so the name was open for someone else to take. Okay. Some football team could name themselves the Oilers if they really wanted to, as they don't exist as a team anymore, as a name. When Houston got their new football team, they decided to change the name. Okay. Because everyone can remember the Oilers as a team without a heart. Remember, they were ahead in the playoffs by 28 points beginning of the second half, and they lost that game. 1 year later, the Houston Oilers ceased to exist as a team. Well, they moved to Tennessee and became the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. Okay. All right. One thing these people had, okay, that's enough. In the election of 1856, the Republicans ran a nominee named John Fremont. And John Fremont did win 11 northern states. It's on this map. The states that the Republicans won in both 1856 and 1860 have the cross through them. Those are the states that Republicans have won twice by now. So John Fremont did pretty well, but that wasn't enough, and John Fremont was easily defeated in 1856 by James Buchanan, the Democratic nominee. Okay. Now let's explain who Abraham Lincoln is and why he's nominated. We all agree that Abraham Lincoln is so important that I should give you a miniature biography. Well, that's all you're going to get from me because I'm not big on biography. But we do, what state is he from? Except, was he born there? No. Because his family is part of that spontaneous wave of settlers moving across from east to west looking for the best possible farmland, borrowing money that they don't have. And when their farms fail time and time again, they just keep moving west. His family had moved to 3 sites in Kentucky and then moved across the Ohio River to Illinois. By the time he was a teenager, his family had moved 4 times. Because back in those days, if you couldn't pay off your loans, you just moved to another county and changed your name. Got another loan and tried again. And eventually, when your father did succeed somewhere and their farm was settled, that's where you became an honorable citizen. And everyone back then had skeletons in their closets, debts that they had absconded on. You didn't ask them about their debts, they didn't ask you about yours. So Abraham Lincoln he's just an average farming family. He doesn't have enough money to go to college. He's basically self-educated, extremely honest man. He's a lawyer, which we all agree means he passed the bar exam. Is it correct that you cannot become a lawyer anywhere in America without passing a state bar exam? We're all going to agree on that? Huh? Okay. Could Abraham Lincoln have ever possibly afforded to go to law school? No. So he passed the bar exam without going to law school first. That is incredibly difficult to do, almost impossible. Matter of fact, I only know 2 Americans who've done that, Abraham Lincoln and Huey Long. You had to be absolutely brilliant to do that. So he's a very intelligent man. Did he not, in fact, marry once for love a young woman who died young first before he married Mary Todd for money and social status? Yes. So I believe it was or I think that the first marriage was only an engagement before she died. They were not, in fact, married. So that officially, Mary Todd is Abraham Lincoln's first wife. He married her for social place. She has wealthy parents. They're influential in society. If you have a goal in this country of running for office, you have to be somebody first or married to somebody. Average people like you and me cannot just announce that they're running for Congress. We're nobodies. Would your parents even vote for you? Probably not. Okay? But Mary Todd is his ticket to running for Congress because now he has access to money and influence. And in the 1840s, he was elected to Congress as a Whig. And as I already told you, he decided to vote his conscience in 1846 and vote against the war with Mexico because he thought it was an unethical war of aggression. The result was he was voted out of office by the people of Illinois just like that in 1848. Because we won the war, so the war was popular. Then the Whig Party ceases to exist. So when the Republican Party is formed, Abraham Lincoln joins the Republican Party. Now in 1858, there is a Senate seat open in Illinois. I got that wrong. Let me try it again. In 1858, the Speaker of the House, the Democrat, Stephen Douglas, is running for re-election in Illinois. True or false? If you wanted to vote Democrat in this election in November, tough. Why do I say that? There weren't any on the ballot. Because when you know that the other candidate is incredibly popular, he's an incumbent who's been in power for many years, who's funneling lots of money into your district, you don't have a chance to defeat him. And nobody wants to destroy their political career by getting squashed like a bug against a popular politician. So none of the famous and better-known Republicans in Illinois than Abraham Lincoln were willing to run against Stephen Douglas. The only person willing to run against him was Abraham Lincoln. Now, back in those days, candidates used to have extended debates. They would get together in public with hundreds of people watching, whoever wants to watch, and they would argue, they would discuss events for hours. Because television and computers had not yet destroyed people's attention spans. And human beings could pay attention to things for hours without losing interest. In fact, life was, when you weren't working, so boring that a politician's debate would be the most interesting thing that would happen to you all year. Okay. Except for maybe getting wildly drunk and beating up your family. Hard work, getting drunk and beating up your family, and voting was all there was to life back then. Mostly hard work. Very, very hard work. So Abraham Lincoln steps up front. They have these debates. The Lincoln-Douglas debates are to slavery what the Federalist Papers are to the Constitution. If you were to go to graduate school and you wanted to, what did people really think about slavery back then? Not what we think about today, but what did people really think back in the 1850s when the arguments were occurring? What were the positions people took, pro or con? How do you find that out? By reading the Lincoln-Douglas debates. There were like many of them. Each of them were hours long. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of words back and forth covering every issue concerning slavery backwards and forwards. So that's one of the, if you're a graduate student, you read these. If you want your thesis to be anything concerning slavery, you must read the Lincoln-Douglas debates. If you want to become a constitutional scholar or even a lawyer, you will be expected to read the Federalist Papers in law school. Okay, and so those are two very famous papers, documents, historical documents that give us a feel for the past. Okay, that's why they're so important. During the first few debates, Lincoln unexpectedly scored a number of successful political blows against the opponent, Stephen Douglas. Because Stephen Douglas tried to argue that we should continue to use popular sovereignty to hold the country together. That there would be free states, and there would be slave states, and there were new states were added to the Union, the people would vote on it. But Lincoln pointed out that that hadn't worked. The popular sovereignty was a failed policy. That it failed miserably to keep violence from breaking out in Kansas. But more than that, he argued very effectively that the Dred Scott case had now made it legal to own slaves everywhere in America. And that caused everyone in Illinois who was listening to go like this. Because, I must reinforce one more time, that racists up north were also strong opponents of slavery, because if you let slaves live in Illinois, that would mean black people could live in Illinois, and that was against the law. When Illinois became a state in 1833, they passed a law, the first law they passed in Illinois, the first day that Illinois existed as a state, barring black people from living in the state, period. Free or slave, no black people allowed, period, for any reason. Now, let's all agree that racism has always existed up north and not just down here in the south. And in fact, in today's America, I would argue the most racist city in America is Chicago, where everybody hates everybody. Okay, even the serfs and croats can't get along. Okay, or maybe I'm wrong, but either way, I don't know. Boston, there's a lot of racism in Boston. And boy, if you are Hispanic, San Diego is not necessarily the best place to try to interact with white people. Or Los Angeles, where white people and Hispanics don't get along at all. Have any of you been to Los Angeles, San Diego in the last 5 or 10 years? Anyone? So no one can agree with what I just said. Can you agree? There's serious disagreements in Southern California. The kind of disagreements which just don't exist yet in Texas. And I sure hope the Republicans aren't going to try to stir it all up next year and start making people hate each other who are tolerating each other right now. As a moderate, I just want to leave things alone. You know? So obviously, if I was running for president, I didn't even get the Constitutional Union Party, which is probably the party I would have voted for. 1860, quite likely. We'll get to that in a little while. Sorry, I skipped that one. Out of order again. Okay. So Lincoln is scoring very successful blows against Douglas, and Douglas is reeling. This is hurting him. And so he has to, as it were, take the gloves off and strike back against Lincoln strongly. Because, sometimes you make an accusation against someone, it's going to work, but it makes you feel bad to say it. But Stephen Douglas pulled it out. He accused Abraham Lincoln in public of liking black people, of sympathizing with black people, of being pro-black. That would have caused everyone in the audience to go, boo, Lincoln, boo. Okay, oh my God, you think black people could become citizens someday? No, boo, boo. Lincoln's reeling. He's been hit real hard, regardless of what his position actually is on slavery and black people. If he doesn't defend himself by denying this, he will have no political future. Okay? When you enter politics, is the most ethical reason to enter politics to try to improve people's lives and make things better? Can you improve people's lives if you lose the election? Can you? No. No, you have to win first, don't you? So you have to say whatever it takes to get elected. Or else you can't change anything. That's unfortunate and reality.
Was that the word abolitionist, the bad word of Illinois?
You better. Yes.
I mean-
I don't know. That was against a lot of be black.
They accused Lincoln of being an abolitionist.
They're accusing Lincoln of being an abolitionist. No, that's even farther. They're just accusing him of sympathizing with black people a little bit. Not quite. I mean, if this is abolitionist, they're accusing Lincoln of being this much.
He wasn't a radical.
They're saying, yes, now he has to defend himself of the accusation of being radically in favor of laws to protect black people that might lead to a civil war or rights to black people. And so Lincoln has to defend himself, and he does. This is when he says many of the things that some of you may know Lincoln said that doesn't make him look all that great from the point of view of the year 2010. Although we are talking about 1858 here. People are products of the times they live in. Okay? No one can shine too far beyond their own times. This is when Lincoln said things like, to prove that he wasn't pro-black, he said, if I could, I would send all black people back to Africa. Okay. He's trying. It doesn't work. People do not believe him. For the rest of his political career, the accusation he was pro-black stuck. No matter how many times in public he said he was not pro-black and made statements that made him look like he didn't sympathize with black people. Especially Southerners did not believe him. They did not believe him. They looked him in the eye, as it were, and said, no, I can tell you're pro-black. Okay, don't tell me you're not a liberal Democrat. I believe you are, as it were. Okay. No matter how much Obama says he's a moderate, there are certain Republicans who will never believe that. They believe Obama is in his heart a liberal Democrat, because in his heart he is a liberal Democrat. Sounds like wrong with that. And even have their own political beliefs. But Bill Clinton did a lot better job covering up and coming across as a moderate. Obama is now having a real hard time, and if he doesn't come across as a moderate by 2012, he will lose re-election. He has to reinvent himself. The way Bill Clinton reinvented himself. And I'm not sure Obama is a reinvent himself kind of person. Matter of fact, can't some people argue that reinventing yourself is actually a flaw in some ways? What you didn't believe in, what you originally said? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that crushed, Lincoln loses big time. He gets crushed. So here is, as it were, a three-time loser in politics. And this teaches you the lesson that in this country, no matter how many times you fail, you can always succeed anyway. But America is not the country of two-time losers. It's the country of 3- and 4-time losers. You can lose twice, 3, 4 times in your life and still turn around and you can be very successful in this country. And there are very few countries in the world that I think are like that. Because he's going to make a big comeback, and he's going to make it in 1860. Okay, so we've got the Republicans all the way to 1860. And now I want to explain why they nominated Abraham Lincoln instead of their more famous politicians. John Fremont had run for president in 1856. Why didn't they nominate him? Or the other guy who then became the Secretary of State, the other man, William Seward. Also more famous. Both William Seward and Fremont were much more famous than Abraham Lincoln. Many people across the country didn't really know who Lincoln was. But Fremont and Seward were on record, publicly on record, sympathizing with black slaves. Meaning that if many Northerners knew if they voted for Fremont or Seward, they were not just voting for a president, but they were also voting for a civil war. That meant the South would secede, and your sons, your husbands, and your fathers might go off and fight and die in horrible battles. And nobody really wants that. So the Republicans had to look for someone who had made more moderate, as it were, anti-black statements. And Abraham Lincoln was on record in 1858 saying things against black people. So they nominated him on the hope that he would be a more moderate candidate, that if elected president, the South could at least tolerate, even if they didn't like him, like broccoli. Okay. Okay. That's not what happened, as we're about to find out. When Abraham Lincoln wins the election, the South does not believe any of Lincoln's statements of moderation. Lincoln says, I don't want to free the slaves. I don't want there to be a war. The South did not believe any of that, absolutely not. Now, before I get to the election, I have skipped a party, haven't I? John Bell and the Constitutional Union Party was made up of ex-Southern Whigs. Ex-Southern Whigs who did not want slavery to lead to a civil war and just wanted the problem to go away. John Bell was the can't we just agree to disagree and pretend slavery didn't exist. And he got the votes of the Southerners in the Upper South who just wanted the problems to go away without people killing each other by the thousands. People in states like Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky who knew the war would be fought over their territory and destroy their lives did not want a war, and so voted for John Bell, the Constitutional Union Party. But he got the fewest votes of all and wasn't going to be president. The person who got the most votes was Abraham Lincoln, who got 1.8 million votes. That's only 40%, but it is a plurality. A plurality is when you get the most votes, but not a majority. And can we all agree that if 4 people are running for the President of the United States all at the same time, it's very unlikely that any one of them will get 51% of the vote? Yeah. Matter of fact, if they all get an equal amount, they'd get 25%, wouldn't they? Yes. Okay. In 1932, when Adolf Hitler became the leader of Germany, it's because the Nazi Party received 30% of the vote. It was the most, there were 6 parties. The Nazis got the most vote. It was only 30%, but it was more than anyone else. Does anyone know who got the second most votes in 1932 in Germany? Communist Party. So basically the Germans it was tough for them. They were either going to be taken over by the Nazis or taken over by Stalin and the communists. They didn't have a very good choice.
Isn't that up by the Ottoman after the communists?
Huh?
Isn't that by the Ottoman after the communists?
Yes. Okay, so he didn't win. Abraham Lincoln got the most votes, and he won all the states in the North. But I can guarantee you that not only did he not win any states in the South, but that he didn't get a single vote in the South. Because in the South, Southern states refused to allow Lincoln's name to even appear on the ballot. If Southerners saw his name on the ballot, they'd get so mad they would tear up the ballot booth, and it would be a riot. So he didn't get a single vote in the South, which means that Abraham Lincoln, for all that the votes he got, was not a national candidate. There was an entire half of the country that so hated him that he would not get a single vote. You guys can understand that if you have a country and one person from the North gets all the votes and from the South, that country is not going to survive. That you need, when you get a leader elected, someone who gets votes in all parts of the country so he can claim to be the leader of all parts of the country. Did Obama win some Southern states? Yes, he did. Did he win some Northern states? Did he win the Western states? So he won some states in all parts of the country. He's our leader. Okay. That makes him not only our leader because of our electoral vote, but also he can legitimately, look, I got votes in all parts of the country, I am a legitimate president of the United States. He can say. Abraham Lincoln couldn't really say that. Okay? He only got votes in the North. He didn't get any votes in the South at all. They hated him down there. And that's what's going to lead to the war. Excellent. Yes?
So what was John Bell's position on slavery?
Let's just ignore it. He wouldn't talk about it at all. Let's not talk about it as tearing the country apart, was his position. So all the possible positions were out there. Okay, let's see where we are now. I did a very bad job today. I was supposed to make it all the way to here. So I'm going to continue teaching for 7.5 minutes. All right. Let's get secession occurring now, please. And see how far we can get in 5 minutes if I read quickly. Okay. What states seceded from the Union, what states did not, and why? Secession means to leave. Okay? People can have a divorce. Countries, there must be a secession. Okay? See, South Carolina is the first state to secede from the Union. Now, Lincoln is elected the first week of November, 1860. And of course, he is immediately the president. True or false? False. He's not the president until the third week of March. So Abraham Lincoln was unable to do anything to keep the South from seceding from the Union because he wasn't actually president yet. By the time he's president, it is the third week of March of 1861, and you see that every state colored dark brown on this map had already seceded from the Union before Lincoln could do anything about it one way or the other. But the man who's responsible for doing nothing is James Buchanan, who was in the process of being impeached when he left office. Okay, so there's nothing Lincoln can do when South Carolina secedes from the Union December 20th, 1860. And then by February, all these 7 states from South Carolina to Texas have all seceded from the Union. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they are now going to form a new country called the Confederate States of America, the CSA, versus the USA. You see, a confederation is the loosest type of association possible. Okay? If you don't want to have married people they have a union, don't they? Don't we call that? If 2 people married together, it's a union? Yep. The boyfriend and girlfriend is a confederation. Okay. If you're friends, but not boyfriend and girlfriend, it's an alliance. And if it gets, that's about it. Alliance, confederation, union. Okay. Because these southern states claimed that they were not seceding from the Union to preserve slavery. They claimed they were preserving the Union for what reason? States' rights. States' rights to do what? Keep slaves. Finish the sentence, kills their argument. There were no other state rights disagreements. This war was not fought over tariff disputes. It was fought over states' disagreements over whether slavery should be legal or not, and where. Okay. All right. Excellent. There were still many states where slavery was legal. On this map, the light brown and the off-white were all slave states. The border slave states were still on the fence. They did not know whether they would stay in the Union or join the Confederate States of the United States, and decided to wait until they heard Lincoln's inaugural address, his first speech as president. If he got on his knees and apologized and begged the South to come back to the Union and promised they could keep their slaves forever, maybe it would avoid the war. That, of course, is not the kind of speech Lincoln decided to give. He gave a very strong speech. He claimed that secession violated majority rule, that it was illegal, that it would lead to anarchy and chaos. After the speech, he called on 50,000 volunteers to join the Union Army. You don't increase the Union Army by 50,000 men unless you're going to use it. And so, as Lincoln began to prepare for a possible war, it caused additional southern states to decide to secede from the Union. Okay? That was just one of the reasons. I have just 1 or 2 things left to say before I let you go. Good. Yes. I don't have time to talk about that. What's left is Fort Sumter. There. Excellent. We are right where I want to stop. Fort Sumter, and we're done. And it's just, 1 more minute. Class is over now, but I'm going to give you 1 more minute. Fort Sumter. Civil War started April 12, 1861 with this Confederate seizure of an American naval base in Charleston Harbor. It was called Fort Sumter. As you probably know, true or false, this very day there are Army and Navy bases all over the United States. Okay. When the South seceded, who owns Fort Hood? The federal government. Does Texas have authority in Fort Hood? No. Okay. So no Texas police officer can arrest anyone in Fort Hood. That is correct. Okay. It's a federal institution. They have their own police authority. There were naval bases all around the South. New Orleans, Charleston, Florida. Now the South has seceded. Who owns those naval bases? Some Republicans wanted to placate the South by abandoning all that territory and giving it to the South, to do anything to avoid war. But President Lincoln decided to reinforce Fort Sumter with resupplies, and that caused the Confederates to seize the fort before the resupplies arrived. So Fort Sumter was not the first battle of the Civil War because nobody died. It was just the Confederates taking over federal territory. But that was the beginning of the war. And once fighting had occurred, once the Confederates had opened fire on the American government, it meant there was war. And so other Confederate states like Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas joined. Other southern states, like those four, joined. Those became the 11 states of the Confederacy. The first state that joined was South Carolina, and the last state that joined was Tennessee. And I do not have time in today's class to explain why those other states did not. We have only 2 classes left to cover the war. I can do that. I won't see you again Thursday. I will see you next week for Tuesday and Thursday like regular, and the week after that is the final exam. Okay, so our 2 classes left for the final exam. And we have to take the map quiz in one of them, don't we? Okay, so I'm no longer as confident I'm going to make it through all the material as I was before I realized that.
Too bad you missed the day.
We'll do our best. I'll do my best. Yes, of course. Last name?